And I'm sure there will be a cool over-under of just how many home runs are going to be hit in Tampa as the Braves get set to take on the Rays for a 3-game series that Jarvis and I are going to preview tomorrow, because we're talking about the two teams who've gone back and forth pretty much this entire season on who had the best record in baseball. Now, a team that didn't go back and forth the first 2 seasons under Arthur Smith, they actually trended up for the most part, right? And now you feel like with all of the offseason acquisitions, how well they did in the draft, the fact that this is Arthur Smith's 3rd year, and many of those players, it's their 3rd year being under the system, they are actually primed to get in the playoffs. Because remember, they've had mathematical chances both seasons, as crazy as that probably sounds. Now, they really are set up for success. And when we say success, we mean postseason success. So writer Frank Schwab on Yahoo Sports, he wrote an article about the Falcons embracing their run first approach with Bijan Robinson. And that was kind of the indicator, right? You've got Tyler Algier, you've got Cordero Patterson, but you go out and get Bijan Robinson in the first round. And so that's basically saying, hey, we have a commitment. We know we were top 5, but we actually want to be number 1, and we will be unapologetic about the commitment that we have to the run game, run it right into a postseason berth, hopefully. But the interesting thing is this, and the reason I'm thinking of framing it this way, Jarvis, is because as we've told our audience, this is list season, right? Who's going to be the top 5 teams to turn it around and get in the playoffs for the first time in 3, 4, 5 years? Which team is going to end up with a winning record, a losing record? We could go on and on. Arthur Smith, is he a top 20 or top 10 football coach, or is he a, what did they say, bottom 6, whatever?
Yeah, bottom of the league.
Yeah, and I'm not even being a homer. Like, no, that's actually just disrespectful, and you didn't do your homework. But yeah, this report also kind of gave some offseason grades that I thought were interesting. Gave pretty much an A minus to what the Falcons were able to do in the offseason as far as particularly the defensive players, right? And he does feel like, hey, if the Falcons have a lot of belief in Desmond Ridder, then okay, we could go for that. It's certainly an elevation over what they had last year, Marcus Mariota. But here's the question. The article tends to focus around whether or not the Falcons get to the postseason, and if that's predicated primarily almost only on the run game. But I would venture to say, hey, can Arthur Smith's run-first offense get them in the playoffs? And do you see a scenario where the Falcons get there without the run game leading the way?
First part of your question, yes, I think they can get there with the run game being the primary focus, because here's why. Like the success of offenses in the NFL, I think that people are predicate that on them throwing the football 35, 40 times in the game. And I just don't buy into that. Like, okay, you can throw some numbers at me and say how, hey, this works and all that stuff. Okay, cool. But like the run game helps everybody. It helps the quarterback. It helps the defense, and I'll explain that a little bit later too as well. And then when you have guys like Kyle Pitts and Drake London, who are tall guys who can, you can throw some 50-50 balls up, and then more than likely those guys are going to come down with the rock. And I think that, I understand what Arthur Smith is trying to do. So here's how that thing's supposed to work, right? Like, you run the ball successfully, you getting 4 or 5 yards a pop, and then on third down, when you want to take a shot down the field or 6 or 7 play drive, the long drive down the field, you're going to take your shots and you're going to hit those shot plays. That's where the Falcons faltered last year. Those shot plays were awful. Marcus Mariota missed horribly throwing the football down the field. Desmond Ridder, not so much. The guy has good connection with the deep ball. You saw those connections when he got onto the field for those last 4 games, specifically with Drake London. So I understand giving him a full offseason as the guy going into this season right here. I really feel like they're going to be able to establish themselves in the run game, work off their play action. The defense is going to be rested, and because they're going to have these long sustaining drives, they're going to be able to throw multiple weapons at guys and be able to stay on the field for long periods of time. That helps the defensive side, and it also helps the opposing. It hinders the opposing offense because you can't get on the field. Yes. So if you can throw the ball around the yard 35, 40 times, it doesn't really matter if you're not on the field. So I think that Arthur Smith's game plan to get him to the offense, to get him to the playoffs, definitely 100%. I really feel like they can do that if everything goes like it's supposed to. But when you're talking about them getting on that solely, though, I really feel like that depends on Desmond Ridder. That's when I feel like it falls on Desmond Ridder's shoulders. Because if he's able to not only hit those shot plays and then be able to work it, and then be able to be really super successful and use Kyle Pitts in that red zone,
Yeah.
that's the only way I feel like they can get there if their run game is, faltering or is not as good as it was last year.
Mm-hmm.
If Desmond Ridder is able to make certain throws when things in those tight windows, when things get really tight down there in the red zone, and be able to utilize Kyle Pitts and Drake London together once they get down there. I think that's the only way I feel like they'll be able to be successful with let's just say an average running game.
Yeah. And I think that's important to kind of point out because, yes, unequivocally, we believe that a run first offense can get the Falcons to the playoffs because remember, they didn't have Bijan Robinson last year and they still landed top 5 and still had mathematical chances both the last 2 seasons to get into the playoffs, and they were run heavy both seasons. It was just obvious last year that they had to go that route. So yeah, if you have a top tier running back like Bijan to add to the running back room, there's no reason why at a minimum you're getting to the playoffs. But I also would say this in agreement with what you're saying. There's this myth that, oh my goodness, it's got to be pass heavy. Well, if you look at what the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles were able to do, they both had serviceable running backs, but running backs who could get them big yards, chunks when needed, right? So you've got to have some type of balance. And that is where Desmond Ridder comes in, because I see a scenario where the Falcons do get there with the running game, even just being solid. Like, I don't think they necessarily have to be 1, 2, or 3 in the league. I think if they're top 10, leaning maybe more to the 5, 6, 7 spot, if you will, that actually might not be bad, because if they're 5th in the league, maybe 6th or 7th, to me, Jarvis, that signals that Desmond Ridder is having a good year.
Right.
That's it, exactly, because that means that you're not forced, to your point, to be in a situation where it could be 3rd and 3, 3rd and 5, and you're like, no, we still have to run it. No, you got Desmond Ridder.
Yeah.
3rd and 5 is quite fine. He'll get you that and then some, right? So I think that's why I see scenarios where this does not have to be the best running core or have the best run offense of all time. I don't think that's necessary. I think the other piece that you mentioned is this: if you can have a mix, even if it's a 60-40 mix with run 60, pass 40, that's still going to get you, in most instances, ahead of the sticks and ahead of that other team as far as time of possession goes. And I think that's critical. And then finally, we saw some really, really great strides season after season, now in this 3rd season, with special teams, right? And really, really flipping the field. And I think we don't talk enough about special teams. Younghoe Koo being money on just about every field goal, always keeping the Falcons in the game or putting them ahead in tight games. And also having the likes of it. I know they don't have Avery Williams this time, but having the likes of Cordero Patterson, who said, hey, I'm going to be running the ball back. I'm going to be, for kickoff returns, right? He said he was going to be doing that this season. I don't doubt that they might find ways to maybe be a little creative with some other players as well, even from the running back room. But my point being, it's going to take all 3 phases of the game for them to be successful, not just to get into the playoffs, but maybe even win a playoff game. So I, for one, don't think that it's necessary that they have to be this lights out running back core just to be successful.
Yeah, and I think that's what Arthur Smith means by when he says balance. He wants it to be more balanced. You know what I mean? When you talk about balance, not necessarily how many times I run the ball, how many times I pass the ball. It's all about how successful I am when I do pass the ball versus how successful I am when I run the football. You know what I mean? Like, if he can be more efficient than he was last year running the football, but not run the ball as much, he'll take that. You know what I'm saying? And if it's not going to be hard to be more efficient passing the ball in passing situations. Right. So, you know what I'm saying? When you think about that, those things even themselves out just by simply having a better quarterback in there, I feel, as far as throwing the rock, like this is something that can end up being pretty special by the time the end of the season rolls around. And I think that, the national media is going to be very slow to jump on board, T. But how I feel about it. Offensively, I really feel like this thing can really get rolling if everything goes correctly.
I think as well. And this, of course, one of the national writers, and we had one a couple days ago that we talked about as well. They actually do feel like the Falcons have something that they can
Mhm.
build on and and he actually talked about it, like he went into detail
Yeah.
about the defense and what these new additions to the defense will be able to do. And so, we talked about here how the offense can set up the defense to be able to put another team in a situation where it's like, okay, the defense can come for your quarterback because we put you, on your heels. But I also feel like the defense can do their thing, right?
Yeah.
And get some 3 and outs there and then give Desmond Ridder something to really work with. So I think it can actually go both ways, and I think it will go both ways, and Falcons fans will be pleasantly surprised this season. But what do you guys think? Do you guys see a situation or a scenario where if the Falcons are more balanced, maybe like a 60-40 or even a 65-35, 65 run, 35 pass, or even 60-40, can they be successful? Or do you feel like it really has to be a 70-30, 80-20 situation on offense, run versus pass, for them to be successful? Let us know. Drop some comments in the chat on YouTube. And of course, don't forget to tell everybody about ATL Day Ones and tell them where they can download it, wherever they download their podcasts.